Everyone in the bakery froze when the little girl set a single crumpled bill on the counter and whispered that it was all she had to buy her mother, a birthday cake. No one laughed, but no one knew what to say, either because the truth was cruel and standing right there between glass cases and buttercream dreams. The bakery sat on a quiet corner in a working-class suburb outside Chicago, the kind of place where time moved slower and memories clung to the wooden shelves like sugar dust. The smell of warm chocolate and vanilla wrapped the room in a false sense of comfort, as if life inside those walls was always gentle. Behind the counter, Margaret Lewis had spent more than 4 decades learning how to read people without asking questions. And the moment the bell above the door rang and the girl stepped inside, Margaret knew this child carried more weight than her small shoulders should have had to bear. Emily Parker was about 7 years old, thin, careful, and painfully polite. Her light brown hair was tied into uneven pigtails that suggested she had dressed herself that morning, probably while her mother rushed out the door to work. Her pink dress was clean but worn, and the hem slightly frayed the sleeves a little too long. She held a faded canvas bag tight against her chest, as if someone might try to take it from her. And her eyes moved slowly across the display case, lingering on cakes she clearly already knew she could not afford. She walked the way children do when they grow up, learning that nothing is free, and wanting something too badly can be dangerous. Margaret stepped around the counter, wiping her hands on her apron, softening her voice out of habit rather than pity. She asked how she could help, expecting the girl to ask for something small, maybe a single cupcake or a cookie. Instead, Emily lifted her chin, straightened her back, and said she needed a birthday cake for her mom. She explained that her mother, Anna Parker, was turning 32 the next day, and that she worked very hard and deserved something beautiful. There was pride in her voice, but underneath it sat a nervous tremble like a glass filled too close to the edge. When Margaret asked what kind of cake her mother liked, Emily answered without hesitation, "Chocolate, with flowers if possible." She paused, reached into her bag, and slowly placed a worn $5 bill on the counter, smoothing it flat with both hands, as if that might make it worth more. The bill looked old, folded and unfolded so many times, it had almost memorized the shape of the girl's fingers. Margaret felt something tighten in her chest. The cheapest cake in the shop cost more than $30, and a proper birthday cake with decoration was well beyond that. She had learned over the years that kindness without boundaries could sink a small business. Yet turning this child away felt like something she would carry home and set beside her bed, unable to sleep. Margaret asked Emily for her name and told her to look around while she thought. Emily pressed her nose close to the glass and studied each cake with a seriousness that broke something open in the room. She finally pointed to a rich chocolate layer cake, decorated with hand-piped buttercream flowers cascading down one side. It was beautiful. It was also a special order, meant for someone else. Margaret opened her mouth to gently redirect her to explain that sometimes wanting something did not make it possible when the bell above the door rang again. The man who entered did not look like someone who belonged in a modest neighborhood bakery, yet he did not look out of place either. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed simply in a dark coat, but there was an unmistakable stillness about him, and the kind that comes from a life spent making decisions that affect more than just one person. His face was handsome in a tired way, as if exhaustion had settled into his bones rather than his muscles. He stood quietly behind Emily's hands, folded, waiting his turn without checking his phone or glancing at his watch. Margaret noticed his manners before she noticed anything else. Emily turned, looked up at him, and asked a question no adult in the room would have dared to ask. She asked if he was sad. The man blinked, clearly caught off guard, and for a brief second his guard slipped, He crouched to her level, studying her the way one studies an unexpected mirror, and admitted that, yes, he was sad. He said he was missing someone, though he did not say who. Emily nodded, satisfied, as if loneliness was something she recognized on sight. She told him her mother sometimes looked like that too, especially when she worried about money or remembered her dad. The man introduced himself as Jonathan Reed, and his voice was calm, controlled, but something fragile moved underneath it. He asked why Emily was at the bakery, and when she proudly explained her plan, holding up the $5 bill like proof of effort rather than currency, understanding crossed his face. Margaret watched the moment stretch, felt the air shift, unaware that this quiet exchange between a little girl and a seemingly ordinary man was about to crack open lives that had been sealed shut for years. Jonathan Reed did not speak right away. He looked at the $5 bill in Emily's small hand, then at the cake she had chosen, and finally at Margaret behind the counter. In that brief silence, years of boardrooms, negotiations, and controlled expressions fell away, replaced by something raw and unfamiliar. He recognized the situation instantly, not because he had ever been poor, but because he had once been desperately lonely in a way money could not fix. Emily sensed the shift before anyone else did. She lowered her voice as if sharing a secret. She said she knew $5 was probably not enough, but it was everything she had. She explained that she had saved it for months, skipping small treats, counting coins on her bedroom floor at night while her mother worked late. Her mother never complained, Emily said, but her eyes always looked tired. This cake was supposed to make her smile, even if just for a little while. Margaret felt her throat tighten. She started to say something practical, something gentle and reasonable. When Jonathan finally straightened and smiled at Emily in a way that surprised even himself, he told her that today was actually his birthday too. Emily's eyes widened, her face lighting up with genuine excitement. She asked how old he was, and when he answered that he had just turned 40, she nodded seriously, as if that number carried great importance. She told him birthdays were special and that nobody should be alone on them. Jonathan let out a quiet breath that was almost a laugh. He admitted that he had planned to spend the evening alone in his apartment, eating something forgettable and going to bed early. He said he worked too much, that he had built a life that looked impressive from the outside but felt empty once the lights were off. He did not mention titles or companies. He did not say that he ran a technology firm worth billions. In that moment, none of it felt relevant. He crouched again, so he was eye level with Emily, and offered an idea that surprised even him. He suggested they share the cake. Emily's cake would be for her mother's birthday the next day, and it would also be his birthday cake. He said they could be partners, just for today, just for the cake. Emily frowned, thinking hard, her small fingers tightening around the bill. She said that if it was his birthday cake too, then he should not pay for all of it. That would not be fair. Jonathan felt something in his chest give way. He told her she could contribute her $5 and that he would take care of the rest. He held out his hand as if sealing a serious business deal. After a moment, Emily shook it solemnly, her grip firm, her expression focused. She handed her $5 bill to Margaret with quiet pride, and Jonathan placed his card beside it, asking Margaret to add whatever Emily's contribution could buy, maybe cookies or cupcakes, something extra for her mother. Margaret turned away so they would not see the tears in her eyes. She boxed the cake carefully and added a generous stack of fresh chocolate chip cookies, calling them Emily's official contribution. While she worked, Jonathan and Emily sat at a small table near the window. Emily asked why he did not have anyone to celebrate with, and Jonathan answered honestly. He talked about parents he had lost, friends he had neglected, and years spent believing success would eventually fill the space loneliness left behind. Emily listened without interrupting. Then she told him about her father, who had died when she was very young, about her mother working 2 jobs, about quiet dinners and late nights. She said her mother never gave up, and that was why she deserved the best cake in the shop. Jonathan looked away, blinking hard, realizing that the child across from him understood devotion better than most adults ever would. When Margaret brought the boxes over, Emily looked at Jonathan and made a decision that would change everything. She invited him to her mother's birthday the next day. She said it would not be fancy, just cake and ice cream in their apartment. But nobody should be alone, especially on a birthday. Jonathan hesitated, something like fear flickering through him, then nodded slowly, unaware that this small invitation was the first crack in the walls he had spent years building. Jonathan spent the rest of the afternoon distracted in ways that surprised him. Meetings blurred together. Emails went unread. His assistant noticed something different in his expression, but said nothing. For the first time in years, his thoughts were not anchored to profit margins or deadlines, but to a small girl with uneven pigtails and a $5 bill folded smooth with hope. He kept hearing her voice, steady and sincere, saying that nobody should be alone on their birthday, as if it were a rule as natural as breathing. That evening, he found himself standing in the kitchen of his apartment, staring at a city skyline that usually made him feel powerful and instead made him feel hollow. The space was immaculate, expensive, and silent. No photographs lined the walls. No laughter echoed from another room. He realized that Emily had seen the truth in him within seconds, something board members and investors had never noticed. Loneliness had become so familiar that he had stopped questioning it. The next afternoon, Jonathan stood outside a modest apartment building a few blocks from the bakery, holding a small bouquet of flowers and a wrapped gift he had spent far too long choosing. He told himself he could still walk away, that he had no obligation beyond kindness already given. Yet when the door opened and Anna Parker stood there, surprise flickering across her tired but gentle face, he knew he was exactly where he was meant to be. Anna was younger than he had imagined, early 30s, with the posture of someone who carried responsibility even when standing still. She hesitated when she saw him, instinctively protective. But Emily appeared beside her, eyes shining proudly, announcing her birthday cake partner. Jonathan explained everything carefully, keeping his voice calm, respectful, never crossing the line between generosity and intrusion. He watched Anna's shoulders slowly relax as understanding replaced suspicion. The apartment was small but clean, decorated with handmade paper banners Emily had taped to the walls. There was nothing extravagant, nothing staged, yet the warmth of the space unsettled Jonathan more than any luxury ever had. Anna tried to refuse the cake, insisting it was too much, but Emily was firm. She said it was already paid for, that it was a team effort, and that promises mattered. Jonathan saw the conflict in Anna's eyes, pride battling gratitude, and felt a deep respect for her restraint. As they ate cake and ice cream, at a wobbly table, conversation flowed with an ease Jonathan had not felt in years. Anna spoke about juggling shifts, about exhaustion that never fully left her body, about trying to give Emily a childhood that felt safe despite loss. Jonathan listened truly. Listened without offering solutions or money or escape. For once, he allowed himself to simply be present. What Anna did not know, what Jonathan carefully kept hidden, was that he controlled resources vast enough to erase most of her struggles overnight. He chose silence not out of manipulation, but out of fear that revealing his status would poison the purity of the moment. For the first time in his life, he wanted connection without leverage. When the evening ended, Emily hugged him tightly and thanked him for being her partner. Anna thanked him too, her voice steady, but her eyes wet. Walking back to his car, Jonathan felt something unfamiliar settle into his chest. It was not triumph. It was not relief. It was the quiet understanding that the life he had built was about to change, and that this time, the change had nothing to do with power and everything to do with belonging. Jonathan told himself the evening had been an exception, a rare pause in a life defined by control and distance. Yet over the following weeks that lie became harder to maintain. He found himself returning to the small apartment on quiet evenings, sometimes with groceries, sometimes with nothing but time. Each visit felt deceptively simple. Dinner at the tiny table. Emily talking nonstop about school. Anna listening with half a smile, half exhaustion. And Jonathan sitting among them, discovering how loud silence could be when it was finally filled. At the office, his absence was noticed. Meetings started without him. Decisions were delayed. Rumors spread in hushed tones among executives who had built their careers around his relentless presence. Jonathan Reed was known for precision, for never losing focus. What no one saw was that for the first time in years, his focus had shifted. He was still powerful, still decisive. But now, his authority came from choice, not obsession. Anna noticed the change too, though she could not name it. She saw how Jonathan watched Emily, how his attention never drifted to his phone, how he remembered small details without effort. She tried to keep their interactions grounded, careful not to mistake kindness for obligation. She had learned the hard way that stability could vanish without warning. Trust was something she offered slowly, in measured pieces. One evening, as Emily worked on a school project at the table, Anna and Jonathan stood by the sink washing dishes. The moment was ordinary, almost forgettable, yet it carried an unexpected weight. Anna spoke quietly about fear, about what it meant to raise a child, knowing you could not afford to fail. Jonathan listened his reflection in the darkened window, looking older, more human. He wanted to tell her everything then, about the company, about the influence, about the safety net he could provide without thinking. But he stopped himself. He realized that revealing his status would not be a gift. It would be a test, and he was not ready to see the outcome. The shift came subtly, almost invisibly. Jonathan started leaving the office earlier, ignoring the internal voice that insisted productivity defined worth. He reconnected with people he had once dismissed as distractions. He learned that the world did not collapse when he stepped away. In fact, it seemed to breathe easier. The company adapted. Others rose. Control loosened, and something healthier took its place. Emily noticed changes too. She asked questions children ask when they sense transformation but do not yet understand it. She asked Jonathan why he smiled more, why he laughed at small things, why he did not look sad anymore. Jonathan answered honestly. He told her that sometimes people forget how to live until someone reminds them. Emily accepted this explanation without question, as children often do. Anna watched these exchanges from a distance, emotions colliding inside her. Gratitude, caution, something warmer she refused to name. She saw how Jonathan never tried to replace Emily's father, never claimed a role that was not offered. That restraint mattered. It told her he understood loss rather than attempting to erase it. One night after Emily had gone to bed, Anna and Jonathan sat quietly in the living room, the television off the city humming faintly beyond thin walls. Jonathan finally spoke the truth he had been avoiding. He admitted that he was not just another man passing through their lives. He told her he led a company most people had heard of. He did not boast. He did not justify. He simply stated it and waited. Anna felt the ground shift beneath her. Shock came first, then anger sharp and sudden. She asked why he had hidden it, why he had let her believe he was something else. Jonathan met her eyes and answered without hesitation. He said he wanted to know who they were before power entered the room. He wanted to be chosen, not needed. The room fell silent. In that silence, Anna realized something unexpected. His secrecy was not deception. It was restraint. And restraint, she understood, was rare. Anna did not sleep that night, not because of fear, but because clarity can be louder than doubt. She replayed Jonathan's confession, his calm tone, his refusal to defend himself. Power had entered the room quietly, without demand. By morning, she understood something essential. The man had not hidden wealth to manipulate her, but to protect truth from influence alone. She waited days before speaking, watching how Jonathan behaved when no answers were guaranteed. He did not pressure. He did not retreat. He showed up consistently, fixing a broken cabinet, helping Emily practice spelling, listening more than speaking. Trust returned slowly like warmth after winter. Anna realized safety was not offered through money, but through reliability and emotional steadiness always. Jonathan sensed the shift without being told. He felt it in Anna's steadier gaze, in the way she stopped guarding every sentence. With that shift came responsibility. He faced a decision he had postponed for decades. Whether to step fully into this life, knowing commitment would cost control. For the first time, sacrifice did not feel like loss to him. He began making changes that reached beyond their apartment. Jonathan restructured his company quietly, empowering others, removing bottlenecks that had once fed his ego. He funded programs anonymously focused on education and single parents, careful never to attach his name. Influence, he learned, did not require visibility. It required intention, patience, and the courage to let outcomes exist without credit. Emily sensed the transformation most clearly. Jonathan no longer felt like a visitor, but like part of the rhythm of her days. She asked if he would stay forever. The question startled him. He answered carefully, saying he would stay as long as she and her mother wanted him. Emily smiled, accepting permanence without fear, with simple childish certainty now. Anna struggled privately with guilt, wondering if allowing happiness invited future pain. She remembered promises broken, stability erased overnight. Jonathan never rushed her past that fear. He acknowledged it, respected it, and waited. Love, she realized, was not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward despite it together, and aware of consequences and shared responsibility ahead now. The moment that sealed everything came unexpectedly. Emily fell ill one night, feverish and shaking. Jonathan drove them to the hospital without hesitation, navigating corridors with authority that surprised Anna. He spoke to doctors calmly, decisively. In crisis, his buried competence surfaced. Anna saw the truth clearly. This man had always carried power, and he used it to protect them. After that night, there were no more walls. Anna allowed herself to lean in, to trust the future, without demanding guarantees. Jonathan asked nothing, but offered everything. Their bond deepened quietly, built on shared mornings, hard conversations, and steady presence. Love arrived not as fire, but as shelter. Strong, unshakable, chosen daily without spectacle, rooted in care and mutual respect. Yet even as peace settled, Jonathan understood consequences would follow. His world would eventually collide with theirs. Secrets could not remain hidden forever. When that moment came, he would not retreat. Power revealed without humility destroys trust. Power revealed through action earns it. He prepared quietly, aligning decisions with values, ready to stand openly beside the family he had chosen. For Anna, acceptance meant courage of a different kind. She chose not to minimize her worth in the presence of influence. She remained herself protective, honest, strong. Jonathan did not elevate her life. He met it. That equality mattered. It defined what came next. Together, they stepped forward not as rescued and rescuer, but as partners shaping a future together. Jonathan understood that love, once chosen, demanded visibility. The quiet life they had built could not remain untouched by the world he came from, and pretending otherwise would only fracture it later. The moment arrived sooner than expected, delivered not by gossip but by consequence. A journalist recognized him leaving Emily's school one afternoon, camera lifting, curiosity sharpening. By evening, his name trended beside speculation, and the walls of anonymity collapsed. Anna learned the truth from a neighbor before Jonathan could explain. She stood at the kitchen window phone, buzzing with alerts, watching Emily color at the table. When Jonathan arrived, she did not shout. She did not cry. She asked one question: "What happens now?" Jonathan answered without deflection. He said the truth would come out completely, and he would not allow it to harm them. He would step forward publicly, not as a savior, but as a man accountable for every choice. The press conference was scheduled within days. Advisors urged distant spin control. Jonathan refused. He walked onto the stage alone, no branding behind him, no prepared statements. He spoke about leadership without grandstanding, about success without worship. He acknowledged privilege and admitted failure. Then he spoke about a little girl who taught him the cost of isolation and a woman who demanded honesty before affection. Names were omitted. Dignity was preserved. The response was immediate and divided. Some praised his humility. Others accused him of manipulation. Investors questioned stability. Jonathan accepted the turbulence calmly. Power tested by exposure reveals its core. He did not retaliate. He did not posture. He acted. Policies shifted. Programs expanded. Decisions aligned visibly with values rather than optics. Markets steadied. Authority redefined itself through consistency. For Anna, the noise was overwhelming. Strangers speculated about her motives, her worth, her past. Jonathan offered protection and resources. She refused spectacle. She kept Emily home from school for 2 days, cooked simple meals, grounded their world in routine. Jonathan followed her lead. He learned that shielding did not mean hiding, and strength sometimes required quiet defiance. Emily processed change differently. She asked why people were talking about Jonathan on television. He told her the truth in language she could hold. He said adults sometimes forget what matters and need reminders. She asked if he was leaving. He knelt, met her eyes, and promised he was not. Promises he had learned were contracts with the soul. The first public appearance as a family came unexpectedly at a charity event benefiting single-parent education. Jonathan asked Anna's consent before accepting. She agreed on one condition: they would attend as equals. No introductions, no titles, just presence. When they arrived, the room shifted. Cameras flashed, whispers followed. Anna felt fear rise, then settle. Jonathan took her hand not to lead, but to stand with her. What followed surprised everyone. Jonathan deferred attention. He redirected questions toward policy impact outcomes. Anna spoke briefly, clearly about resilience without gratitude theater. Emily smiled at strangers, unaware of significance. The image circulated widely. Not wealth on display, but alignment. Not rescue, but partnership. The narrative softened. That night back home, exhaustion gave way to relief. They had crossed the threshold together. The future would be watched, questioned, challenged. But it would no longer be hidden. Jonathan understood that true authority survives scrutiny only when grounded in truth. Anna understood that choosing love did not erase risk, but gave it meaning. Emily slept peacefully, unaware she had already changed the world again. Morning came quietly, steady sunlight touching the table, reminding them commitment was daily ordinary, brave and chosen without applause together. Time reshaped everything in ways no announcement or headline ever could. Months passed then, a year, and the chaos that once threatened to swallow them slowly receded into something manageable. Jonathan settled into a rhythm that balanced leadership with presence. He still carried authority, but it no longer consumed him. He learned to delegate without guilt, to trust, without controlling, and to measure success by who was sitting at the dinner table instead of what appeared on quarterly reports. Anna returned to school part-time, completing the nursing degree she had once abandoned out of necessity. Jonathan never framed his support as rescue. He adjusted schedules, shared responsibilities, and respected her independence fiercely. That respect became the foundation of their relationship. Love grew not through grand gestures, but through shared fatigue late-night conversations and the quiet understanding that neither of them needed to be smaller for the other to exist fully. Emily flourished in ways that felt almost miraculous. Stability gave her confidence. She laughed more easily, spoke more openly, and stopped checking faces for signs of departure. Jonathan attended school events without cameras, sitting in small chairs, clapping too loudly, embarrassing her just enough to feel normal. He never asked to be called anything. He waited. Children, he had learned, decide belonging on their own timeline. The question came one evening after dinner, soft and unplanned. Emily asked if Jonathan would always come back. He answered yes without hesitation. She nodded satisfied, then added that she thought it was okay to call him Dad sometimes if he wanted. The word landed gently, but changed everything. Jonathan did not speak for several seconds. He simply opened his arms, and Emily stepped into them without fear. Anna watched from the doorway, tears falling freely, understanding that families are formed when someone stays. Jonathan proposed months later in the most unremarkable way imaginable. No ring presentation, no audience. Just a quiet walk and an honest question spoken with humility. Anna said yes without drama because certainty does not need performance. Their wedding was small, attended by those who had witnessed the journey rather than the status. Margaret from the bakery baked the cake, refusing payment, calling it an honor. Emily walked between them, proud and steady. Jonathan adopted Emily officially the following year. The courtroom was quiet, the moment understated. Papers signed, names affirmed. Emily squeezed his hand and smiled as if nothing had changed, because in her world, nothing had. He had already chosen her long before legality caught up. That night they ate chocolate cake again, laughing at the symmetry of beginnings and endings. What the world never fully understood was that Jonathan's greatest transformation had nothing to do with love or family alone. It was the shedding of illusion. Power did not make him safe. Control did not make him whole. Connection did. He spoke less in public now, but when he did, people listened differently. Not because of wealth, but because his words carried lived truth. Anna sometimes caught Jonathan watching Emily with quiet wonder. When asked what he was thinking, he said she had saved his life. Anna corrected him gently. They had saved each other. That understanding anchored everything that followed. Their life was not perfect. It was real. It chosen daily, built slowly. And in that deliberate construction, they discovered something enduring. Belonging was not inherited. it was created. Years later, the bakery on the corner still stood its windows glowing softly in the afternoon light, though time had moved forward for everyone who once gathered inside it. Emily returned there on the day she graduated from college, not because she needed cake, but because some places hold the shape of who we become. Jonathan and Anna sat near the back, watching her greet Margaret with the same careful warmth she had carried as a child, now grown into confidence rather than caution. At the graduation ceremony, Emily spoke without notes. She talked about her mother, who taught her that love is work and dignity is non-negotiable. She spoke about the father she lost too young, whose absence taught her empathy before language. Then she spoke about a man who entered her life with no intention of staying, who carried power he never used to impress, and who chose presence over privilege when it mattered most. She said success meant nothing if you were alone, and that family is built when someone decides not to walk away. Jonathan listened, eyes wet, remembering the man he had been before a child asked if he was sad. He had thought wealth meant security, influence meant importance. He had been wrong. Everything he had truly needed arrived disguised as $5 and courage. Anna squeezed his hand, grounding him in the present, reminding him that transformation is never singular. It is shared. After the ceremony, they returned home together, a family shaped by choice rather than circumstance. The house was full of ordinary noise, laughter, spilling into hallways, dishes clinking, life unfolding without spectacle. Jonathan no longer measured time in achievements, but in moments that did not demand proof. He had learned that leadership without compassion is hollow, and compassion without action is fragile. Balance, he discovered, is built slowly through humility and consistency. That evening, Emily placed a chocolate cake on the table, simple and imperfect. No flowers piped in buttercream, no ceremony, just tradition. Jonathan smiled, understanding the symmetry. Some things begin quietly and end the same way. He told her once more that she had saved him. Emily shook her head, older, now wiser. She said partners do not leave each other alone. Outside, the city moved on, unaware of the lives it had almost missed. Inside, connection endured. The lesson remained simple and stubborn. The richest life is not defined by what you own, but by who you choose again and again, even when it costs you comfort. Especially then, from a psychological and social perspective, this story reveals a truth many studies quietly confirm. But few people truly live by human connection. Not status or wealth is the primary factor that heals loneliness and restores meaning. Jonathan did not change because he gained love. He changed because he finally allowed himself to be seen without leverage. Emily did not save him with money or innocence alone, but with courage, empathy, and the instinct to include rather than ignore. This is how families are formed, how leaders are remade, and how quiet lives create lasting impact. If this story moved, you take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. These small actions help us continue sharing stories that remind us what truly matters beneath success and power. And before you go, leave a comment with this simple phrase that captures the heart of the story: choose kindness.